there's several ways that we're going to kind of look at this, but I think people get so confused about niching their marketing because they feel like it means that they totally have to change how they work, right? So that's one of the biggest things I want to talk about today is the misconception around that. Hey, Katie, thank you for being here. Is the misconception around that. Obviously, if you guys have questions while we're going through this or examples, let me know. But what we really want to get focused on is how do we communicate a clear and specific problem and result, right? This is where people often mess it up, but also be able to be vast and varied in our work, right? So let's start with like, you need to know the end result and focus on that first, right? Too many people get stuck marketing to the process. So like, I'm just going to use this example, but you guys know, as always, if you're here and you want to give me your business as an example, I'm always happy to use that. But let's say I'm like an energy healer or Reiki person or an empowerment coach, right? What we can get really locked in on sometimes is talking about the process, right? So it's like the process of energy healing or whatever, instead of like, what is the result that healing is helping me to achieve? Like, what is the problem and what is the result? So that could be totally different, right? Like those could be so varied, right? Yes. Oh, Leslie, hi. So happy to have you. Katie says this was me. Do a budget, do a budget, do a budget. Yes. Right. You're talking to the process so much, right? Do a budget, get your budget, do the budget. And nobody really can connect the process sometimes to the result. And so we're losing the like connection point to our audience there. And like, I could be doing a budget for a multitude of reasons. Like maybe I'm doing it because I want to save, because I want to get out of debt, or because I want to, buy something specific or whatever. But it's like, we have to have that really clear outcome for someone to understand why the process matters. It doesn't mean you don't still do a budget or you're not still doing energy work. But if I'm not clear around what that is, that's when I'm losing people in my marketing, because I'm talking so much about the process, right? Diana says, would love to hear examples for life coaching too, since it's already so into intangible outcomes and processes. Yeah, Heather, totally. So needed this reminder all about the energy. Yes, Heather. Yeah, Diana, I think it's still picking a result that life coaching helps you achieve and really identifying that problem and solution. So like, as a life coach, maybe I'm helping someone figure out their next career path. And so the problem is they feel really stuck. The solution or the outcome is going to be like, having a career path they feel amazing about. Or, maybe it's totally different. Like I personally worked with, both as coach and client, someone who is a life coach, but is a marriage coach. And so her outcome looks totally different. She's using the same tools and a similar process in many ways, right? But it's still very different to applying that process to the outcome of have a better marriage versus to the outcome of, find like your best career path or something. So that's why that part matters so much, because if not, we're expecting our audience to do so much work in connecting those dots, right? So like if I'm having to connect the dots of like how energy healing is going to help me get X versus you explicitly saying, I'm going to use energy healing to help you get X, that's so different in terms of how it's translating with your audience and how they know you're speaking to them and it's for them. You're so welcome, Diana. Thank you for asking that. Another thing I see this with too, and I can speak to this having been in that position myself, is I think a lot of therapists really struggle with this. I've seen this in terms of my clients as well, because you're so process focused in therapy and you're not marketing really in the same way. And so it feels like, and even like aren't supposed to in many ways, depending, right? And so it feels like we get so connected to the process that we really forgot about like problem solution. And then this is where it gets so confusing for our audience, because the process for a lot of your clients is going to look really, really different, right? So the process you use with one client to heal their marriage versus the process you use with another client to heal their marriage might look very different, or you might use energy healing with all your clients, but the way in which you do it for each client is very specific and different, right? So if you get so invested in talking about the process, you will usually confuse your audience quite a bit because it looks different in so many ways. But if you stay really locked in on problem and outcome, you get to be expansive around the process in your work with people, right? So the point there is that you can use a variety of things in your work to support your clients to get the end result. But if you try to make all of your marketing around that, you're probably going to lose people in their tracks a little bit because you're expecting them to make so many connections there versus you saying it to them. So an example that I'll kind of give here is that like last week I had a conversation with one of my clients about basically like her relationship with a higher power and like what she thinks about that and how she's processing through that and how that feels really present in her life right now and how it's showing up for her and all of this stuff. That was like the majority of our conversation. It was really relevant to our work because it's impacting her on a really deeply personal level. And so anything that is impacting us that deeply and that personally is of course going to impact our business and how we're operating and how we're showing up and all of these things, right? So it's still fit with the outcome I'm there to help her get. However, that particular conversation or that particular process isn't necessarily like something I'm going through with every client, you know? It's not like I'm not available to, it's just not the journey every client is having or needs to process. And so the reason that's important to say is because this is where it could get messed up, right? Like I could make that a client lesson and be like, I'm talking to my client all about XYZ thing and her relationship with her higher power and how it's doing this, this, and this. And then I would lose a lot of people thinking, oh, I didn't realize that that's what Lacey coached on so much. Like that isn't my need at all. Like I really, need to figure out how to grow my business. And do you see how like I would lose so many people by confusing them with that if I like, put that into a client lesson? But I don't have to change my work because of it. Like my work gets to be all that I want it to be, right? It gets to meet the client where they're at. We get to have that conversation. We get to go into that like juicy depth of what she's going through there. But it just doesn't have to translate to my marketing. If not, that's when I will typically confuse people. Or if I do, that's when I will typically confuse people so much sometimes because I'm trying to translate the process that this specific client is going through to get something as opposed to the outcome of that work. Does that make sense to everyone? If you're listening and that's landing, let me know. If not, I will give many more examples and explain it in other ways. Hi, Michelle. Michelle says popping in real quick while my husband grabs the kiddo from daycare. Thank you for being here, Michelle. I hope you are having a beautiful week as an entrepreneur still and just relishing in that. But I really think that that is so important. So here's the thing. It doesn't mean that you can't have a clear framework, right? Obviously I have a framework that I talk about all the time, which is mindset, strategy, and execution. But if you think about all the ways I'm probably helping people under that framework, right? I have like a million mindset tools that I use. There are a ton of different strategies my clients are using. They execute in so many ways, all of the things, right? It's like, I still have to keep my marketing really focused there. So even if all of these things are coming up in our work, like I sometimes joke, like, sometimes I am a marriage coach or a health coach or a business coach or a life coach or whatever, like I know all of my clients that are listening would feel like that was 100% true, that those vacillate on any given day or moment. But the point is it's still for this specific outcome. But if I started marketing to like well, I also like will talk you through like some divorce stuff that you're going through that's really hard, and I'll also talk to you about your relationship with God, and we'll also dive into some stuff that's going on with your family, and I can also help you with, like, you know what I mean? No one would hire me ever, right? But it's why my clients stay with me at the same time. So that dichotomy gets weird for people of like, if I talk about that so fully all the time in my marketing, it would be very, very hard for me to get hired, but it's also what my clients love. And that's where it's not a bait and switch, like Tristan said. That's where it's like keeping it really, really clear that like, I am here to help you get this outcome. And I will, you know, take out all the tools in my toolbox to help you do that. But like, that's the point we're shooting for. It's not about like, because I'm also here to help you with your marriage or whatever. That's not why anyone's really hiring me. They're hiring me because they want me to help them get that outcome. And then they have a beautiful experience in feeling supported and held and all the things that helps them get there. So that's how you get to keep your work amazing and vast and varied and exciting and all the like juicy things we want, without really confusing the shit out of your audience by putting all of that into your marketing, right? Michelle says, I watched several hours of Netflix this afternoon, so I think I'm doing something right. You're totally doing something right, Michelle. That sounds lovely. Also tell us what you watched, because I am always available for new things. Heather said, so basically find the common thread in all of it, right? Yeah, I think it's the common thread. And I also think it's very like, I feel so like generic and boring when I say this, but it's kind of true. It's like problem outcome is really the common thread that I would keep coming back to, like, and almost like being willing to be super simplistic there. I think that sometimes in like trying to stand out online, we can almost make that more complicated. You know, like we can think that it has to be like, you know, like such a different way of saying the problem, or such a like unique way of saying the outcome, or all of this stuff. And it's like, if you can keep your problem and outcome really, really specific, and your audience can just fully get that all the time, that's when your marketing lands, right? Like, I think that, you know, so many people will like ask me questions about clients or use my clients as examples when they're talking to me, and they'll be like, yes, but so-and-so like must just do it so differently. And I'm like, her problem is like people feel stuck or drained in their business, and the outcome is like they feel awesome and make more money. Like, I'm just using that as an example, but like, do you see what I mean? It's not like someone's like getting so complicated and creative and all of this stuff. It's like the thread is like, what's the problem? What's the outcome? And then all the tools to help you create that outcome are at your disposal as a service provider, right? And I think like that's when it gets fun, but where it gets confusing is when we confound the two. So where we think, because I'm not saying all of that in my marketing, I can't possibly do that in my work. Or when we think, because I'm doing that in my work, I have to say all of that in my marketing. That's where it gets weird, right? But when you're like, oh, I'm really clear on my marketing with the problem and outcome, and then I really meet the person where they're at with helping them get that outcome, that's when it all feels like fun and expansive, right? Hey, Julianne. Yeah. Leslie says, I think it's difficult to set myself up, or to set self apart, since most people have similar outcomes, such as increased income or improved health. The thing I would say there, Leslie, is like, what I try to remember with that is like, the reason a lot of people have that outcome is because that's what a lot of people also want. So the market wants that, like increased income, like the market really does want that. So what you have to really play with is like, how do I infuse my personality into that? And of course, it can also be your way of doing it. Like I was saying, it's totally good to have a framework or like a process, but don't limit yourself in that process. But that's really, I am a big believer in like, don't feel like problem outcome has to be like this huge differentiator. It's really more like how you go about it. So like the problem of or the outcome of increased income, people solve that problem in like 100 different ways. Like some people might be like, well, the problem is messaging, or the problem is content, or the problem is mindset, or the problem is strategy, or whatever. So like, that's where you can, add your spin, right? And that's also where you can set yourself apart a bit. And then also just in doing it like to your personality and getting someone really, really connected with you and the value you bring, but not feeling like you have to make that outcome really different, because a lot of times, like, we do really want the same like basic outcome. So that's why they're working too. So I think just like sometimes taking that pressure off to feel like it has to be really different, and it almost being about people building relationships with you and your brand versus this like huge different way to stand out. Like, I don't feel like I have anything in my messaging that's super standout at all. I think people have just seen the value I provide over time and the values of our brand, and that's what attracts them. And honestly, same with most of my clients. Like, I think they all have like their personality infused into it. I'll use my client Julia as an example, because she's been on here so much, and I know she doesn't mind if I talk about this. She's an open book, but her outcome is definitely increased income in business. She adds her own flavor in terms of like doing it with pleasure, but like, there's nothing that different, but people very much love her and her brand and how they connect with her. So I think that's freeing in a sense. And I think it's also one of those things that can be like the eye roll moment, when people are like, just be yourself in your marketing, just be you, da, da, da. And like, sometimes we're all like, yeah, got it. But I actually do think that that's sort of it. And that's sort of where our standout moment comes from. And that's where we don't confuse people more too, because we get to be like really us versus being really in the weeds of like, and I'll help you with this and this. And also I talked to a client about, whatever, her marriage this week. And so if you're struggling with like marriage and business, I got that too. And all this stuff, right? It's more like, let them connect with you, because that's the constant in your business. Let them connect with that problem solution, because that's the constant in your business. The other things in terms of the tools you're using and the way in which you're helping your clients are the variable things in your business that you don't want to infuse in your marketing, because that's when it gets confusing. So think about like constant versus variable when we're thinking about this too. Leslie said, I think you are right about the brand and connecting with the individual that makes the difference. Yeah, I totally think so. And I think that's where, in many ways, it's freeing for us, because it's not like, oh my gosh, how do I have this like different outcome in the sea of coaches, or a different outcome when I know people really want this outcome? It's more like, how do I just keep showing up more fully as me and more fully in the way that feels good to me? And like, that's what I can kind of nail every time. I think that can be kind of freeing sometimes, when it doesn't feel like I have to like hack a certain message or something. It's more like I have to infuse my personality into the business, and knowing that some people will buy this person's personality and some people will buy that person's personality, like just like dating, like nobody's wrong here. There's just different attraction points. Like, I think that I'm certainly some people's cup of tea, and I'm certainly not some people's cup of tea, and that's kind of okay. And it's not necessarily because of my problem or solution. It's really more because of my personality. Like, some people are just going to dig that and some people aren't, right? I mean, I can't imagine I wouldn't. I'm kidding. But right, I think that, again, that's where like we have that permission granted a little bit. But yeah, so that's what's really helpful in the marketing, is to keep coming back to like, what are the things that are constant and certain in the business in terms of that, like, that I help with this outcome, that I help you if you have this problem. And what are the things that are going to change from day to day and week to week? That's a lot of this other stuff about like, what tool am I using, or what conversation am I having? So even when I do like client lessons, for example, there are certain things that I just would never put in a client lesson, because I know it wouldn't make sense to my audience in the marketing. But I also feel really, really, really proud of supporting a client with that, right? So again, just kind of seeing that you can have all of this work that you're really proud of, but also being really careful to not feel like that means you have to infuse it into the brand in a way that's so variable that your audience feels kind of like whiplash sometimes, where it's like, well, I was going to hire Lacey, but she's been talking about like dealing with marital challenges in business a lot. And that's like not what I have at all. So like, maybe that's not a fit. Like, do you see what I mean? Right? How that can get so confusing. Julianne says, love that constant versus variable. Good. Yes. I'm so glad that landed. I think that is a really personally helpful way for me to look at that. Yeah. So the thing I want to really come back to here is this doesn't mean we're hiding. It just means we're creating clarity for our audience around things. So it doesn't mean we're like hiding that like there's work that we're doing that has to be hidden behind the scenes or any of that, right? It's just realizing that like, it's kind of almost like that conversation we had about transparency, where it's like, no matter how open someone is, you're never going to have full transparency into their life or business. And the same is kind of true here. No matter how much context I give, you're never going to fully get what the work I do looks like every day. And so my job is to try to make that as clear as possible. And so not thinking about it like, oh my gosh, but now I'm like not allowed to say certain things, or I'm like hiding how I help, or don't at all feel like you have to do that. But what you are really focused on in your marketing is like, how much clarity can I provide? How much can I focus on the constant thing? And how clear can I be in doing that? Because that's when people buy, and when your success skyrockets is when they are so clear that you are the person to help them get that result that they want, right? If they're having to make a lot of guesses or connections, like by going, oh, well, I guess that life coaching would help me get the job I want. Yeah, okay, I could see how it would, like, we're losing them. That clarity is not there. But if they're like, this person is the person saying that they can help me get that job, that's what I need. That clarity is what creates safety, and it's what creates sales, right? And so just watching that as kind of like the barometer in your business of like, where am I talking about the constant thing, and where am I really taking it back to the clarity, and then giving yourself full permission and freedom in your work to be expansive in so many ways. Does that make sense? I think like for me, that was such like a what's the word I want to use? Like a turning point moment in my business, when I realized like I get to have all of this like fun over here, and I still get to be a really exceptional marketer who is providing a ton of clarity to her audience here, and feeling like I could do both of those in a really in integrity and aligned way was such a turning point for me, and not feeling like I had to be one way or the other, i.e. I had to like only do the exact thing I'm talking about in my marketing, or talk about every single thing I'm doing in my marketing, just so everyone knows, just in case, right? But you guys know I'm always about like both and dichotomy. And I think this is it, where it's like the both of having all these tools in your toolkit, but not feeling like you have to talk about them all the time, I think is really, really hard sometimes, but it's also really, really magical. Because you don't create confusion on either end. You're not holding back with your clients, and you're also not creating a ton of unnecessary confusion in your audience just for the sake of talking about something. And so being able to really get crystal clear in your niche, your marketing, your problem, your solution is honestly what's going to create traction for you online, right? Hands down, 100%. It is so hard for someone to be like, you're the person to help me with X if you're not talking about X enough, or to say, hey, have you followed Lacey because she's the person to help you with Y if I'm not talking about Y, right? But it is so easy to start to build that traction, even if it's just through like 2 people tagging you, or, you know, 1 person referring you or whatever, when you're so clear here. But again, that doesn't have to take away the fun of the work. So really think about that this week in your business. Like, what are the constants that I want to keep talking about? And then what are the variables that I get to have fun with? And I think that's how we have novelty in our business. You know, like when someone is, you know, almost feeling bored or something in their content, what I'm usually saying to them is like, what's fun and exciting about your work right now? Right? Because sometimes we can feel like, oh, I'm saying the same thing a lot in my content. Like we kind of want to, that's what provides that clarity for our audience. But where I can get novelty and newness and excitement is through the work I'm doing, the experiences I'm having with that. So also remember that can like meet a lot of needs in your business too, right? Is getting to have that fun and newness and getting to stay really clear and really consistent. So for me, like so many people are like, you know, you're so clear, you're so consistent, you're always showing up, that kind of thing. Like, don't you get bored of that? And I really don't, because I have so much like novelty and excitement and all of that and the type of work I get to do with clients. So just remembering like those can both meet your needs in different ways too. Hi, Emily. Thank you for joining me. Love the idea of constants and variables. So good. Good. Okay. Well, I hope this was super helpful. That's kind of all I have on this topic. I don't need to repeat the same thing to death, but I do think that that's really important. And again, for me personally, this was such a shift. So I hope that it is the same for you. Oh, Diana has a question. Can this work for general life coach where the outcome is general? For example, outcome equals achieving our goals, or does life coach need to have a specific outcome like health, relationship, career, etc.? Diana, my takeaway there would be, if you want to market online, I really, really highly encourage someone to have a specific outcome. I think that it is really hard for someone to know they want to follow you and keep consuming your content and keep coming back and like, you know, liking your posts or watching your thing if they don't feel like you're specifically helping them with their thing, health, career, whatever. And it really, it makes it so much harder to make that connection there, right? I think sometimes that works a little bit more when someone's like doing in-person work and they're just kind of going off of referrals and things like that. But I think if you really want to do like content marketing online, having content that's tailored to a specific outcome is really, really, really valuable to build that traction and to build that interest where someone wants to keep coming back to that over and over again because they feel like you're truly helping them solve their problem. I just think that that is so helpful and so important. And again, it doesn't have to change the work you're doing of helping someone achieve goals. It's just applying that to a more specific goal and applying content to that. And that's where I also notice that people struggle with writing content, is when they don't have a specific outcome. That's when it'll feel like, why is content so hard for me? So hard to do content marketing. It's so hard to write sometimes because it feels like there's not like a tether point there for you either. So I don't want to say like ever there's just like one answer across the board. I hate that kind of thinking. So I won't say like 100%, yes, you need to, but I will say, like, I think in the majority of cases that makes your ability to market, to create and write content and to have people keep coming back to that and then convert online easier. Do I think that you have to do it no matter what? No, I think there's always ways to do things, but I do feel like that would be my best advice in general, is that tailored specific outcome will get you more traction, more ease of conversion, more ease with content overall. So I hope that helps. Awesome. All right. So if anybody has any other questions, of course, let us know. Again, I so appreciate you guys being here. I really, really, really value you listening each week, you tuning in live. It truly means the world to me. So I hope you guys just know I never, ever take that for granted. So thank you for being here. I will give away that Million Her bundle probably tomorrow. I'll let y'all know and tag someone as the winner. And again, if you have it, don't want it, whatever, let me know and we'll figure that out too. But just really, really appreciate you guys. And I hope you have a beautiful week. All right. Bye, y'all.